Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you, Alex, very much for that introduction. I should, first of all, say that I'm very pleased you've had a slightly slower start. It's very important, these particular functions, if I may call it that, to do the networking. So the networking has obviously gone very well last night, and that's all to the good. My name is James Younger, as Alex was saying, and I thought it would be helpful to spend this morning, or my speech really, talking about my reflections on the passage of the Act. And I thought that, let me say what I'm going to say, and then I will open up to questions. And I thought it might be helpful for you to ask questions about the Lord's angle of the bill or the Act. In fact, do ask me any question if you like, but I thought that would be the focus of my talk. It, of course, started as a bill and therefore held the acronym of HERB, or HERB. And when it received royal assent as an act, the acronym converted to HERA, or hurrah, which I think reflected everyone's relief at its conclusion. But talking of reflections, some of you will know that during the committee stages, I used the expression, "I will reflect," but perhaps rather too often for some peers who were seeking perhaps rather more certainty at the earlier phases of the process. And at one particular point, a peer, a baroness, revealing her exasperation, commented that she hoped that there would be further reflection as ministers withdrew to the room of many mirrors. Well, I can reassure you that Joe Johnston and I never felt the need to do this. We did, however, meet numerous parliamentarians of all parties and many stakeholders, including IHE, and we debated and we considered the concerns and points raised to secure the Act we have today. Now, I have taken a good few bills through Parliament, and despite what I have said above, I did actually find it a stimulating and enjoyable, although perhaps somewhat protracted experience. So I think let's go back to the beginning and just remind everybody as to where we started. And you may remember there were 6 manifesto commitments in the 2015 Conservative Manifesto. Following this, the November 2015 Green Paper, entitled Fulfilling Our Potential, Teaching Excellence, Social Mobility and Student Choice, which resulted in May 2016's White Paper, entitled Success as a Knowledge Economy, Teaching Excellence, Social Mobility and Student Choice, and then the introduction of the Higher Education and Research Bill. The journey from HERB to HERA wasn't an easy one, as you will know. Following the introduction of HERB on the 19th of May 2016, came, and you'll remember this, the EU referendum vote, indelibly now in everyone's memory, 23rd of June 2016. How can we forget that? The change in PM and a reshuffle included also a machinery of government change, with higher education policy moved to the Department for Education. So straddling 2 departments, the bill had numerous ministers directly involved, 1 Minister for Universities and Science, 3 Secretaries of State and 6 ministers. A record number at the time of 69 peers speaking at Lord's second reading. It's quite a long time, that. I think it's many hours. A record number at the time of 650 amendments tabled at Lord's committee. And in total, HERB had over 1,300 amendments tabled, to answer Alex's point. Finally, a snap general election was called, although it didn't seem so snap at the time. It seemed to go on forever, as far as I could tell, squeezing parliamentary time and resulting in a fast-paced wash-up process, ping-pong and royal assent. And I can explain those terms later if people don't know about them. But despite the challenges faced, I am most proud of the fact that there was consensus across all parties that HERA was carefully developed through dialogue in both houses and in consultation with stakeholders. And of course, scrutinising legislation is what the Lords is about. And I'm also proud that the House showed itself at its best in the quality of debate with the necessary time spent on all the issues. It was one of the first bills to be introduced after the Queen's speech and one of the last to receive royal assent before prorogation. And that is, if you don't know, that's the period just before the Queen's speech when Parliament stops. And approximately 110 hours were spent scrutinising the bill. It also benefited tremendously from thoughtful input from experts, reviews and independent reports, and we listened and took note of so many of them. The sector representative bodies, including IHE, invested lots of time to ensure that the views of the providers that you represent were fully heard, understood, and reflected in the legislation. Huge numbers of highly distinguished academics, former ministers, and those with experience of the university and research sectors in both houses extensively scrutinised the legislation and provided rich, detailed, and high-quality debate. There is absolute agreement on the importance of our world-class higher education sector and our globally leading research. And I am pleased that the Act that we have today has been strengthened from when the bill was first introduced, putting students, choice, and value for money and global competitiveness at the centre stage. HERA is the most significant legislative reform of the sector for 25 years, as Alex was saying earlier, transforming a complicated, out-of-date regulatory system to the Office for Students, introducing a new risk-based regulatory framework. And I know you heard from Nicola Dandridge yesterday on the detail of this, so I don't propose to cover this. I'd like now to focus on what the Act actually means for the entry of new high-quality providers. In 2015, the Competition and Markets Authority noted that aspects of the current regulatory system could be holding back competition. Competition can drive diversity and innovation, which are important because there is no longer a one-size-fits-all model for higher education. Newer, smaller, and specialist providers can drive innovation, offering courses and delivery models that suit the needs and aspirations of a more diverse student body and provides employers with enough of the right graduates. And we have some excellent examples amongst us today. The University of Law, the first alternative provider to gain a university title, offers flexible provision, including part-time and accelerated degrees, and we spoke a lot about that during the course of the bill. It had the joint highest student satisfaction ratings in the 2016 National Student Survey. Point Blank Music School, voted the world's best music production and DJ school, provides students with the unique opportunity to study with expert instructors at state-of-the-art facilities in the creative process of making music. And BP University offers students the opportunity to complete an honours degree over 2 years, meaning the student incurs less debt and can enter or re-enter the workforce more quickly. So the creation of new providers is undoubtedly a force for good, both academically and economically. And more recently, which has been pretty high profile in the press, the Dyson Institute of Engineering and Technology in Wiltshire opened its doors this autumn to its first class of engineering degree apprentices. And last month, the government announced £15 million worth of funding for the new model in technology and engineering, which aims to become the first new greenfield university in the UK for 30 years. Addressing the growing need for engineering talent in the advanced manufacturing, artificial intelligence sectors is very important. These are the types of high-quality providers we need to encourage into the system, which will help address the skills shortages that the country faces. Research from the LSE shows that doubling the number of universities per capita could mean a 4% rise in future GDP per capita, and a UUK report found that universities generate nearly £100 billion for the economy each year, supporting 940,000 jobs. And these are very impressive and very important figures. However, the current regulatory framework is not favourable to encouraging new providers and can feel highly restrictive for such providers. The OFS's proposed regulatory framework we are currently consulting on, we believe, will change this. And I'd like to say a bit more about this. The new framework and the single register of higher education providers will do away with the current fragmented system where providers in receipt of grant funding are regulated by HEFCE and the DFE regulates alternative providers designated for student support. This will ensure a single route into the sector for existing and new providers, levelling the playing field for all. Designed with the needs of all providers in mind, including new first-time entrants, the OFS will regulate providers based on any risks they pose and benefits or funding they access, not based on age or corporate form. This approach will ensure new high-quality providers are encouraged, not faced with additional barriers, and will streamline the processes to enter the market and compete with established providers. The risk-based approach will also enable the OFS to set a high bar to entry to ensure that students receive high-quality education. There will be more ways to begin degree level provision with more choices available, and I'm sure many of you will be aware of this, but let me go through them. The new degree awarding powers, new high-quality providers which can demonstrate that they can meet the DAPS criteria will be able to gain access to new DAPS directly without the need for a track record or reliance on an incumbent to validate its degree. If a higher education provider has a 3-year track record of delivering higher education, currently 4 years, as you will know, it can apply for full DAPS, enabling it to award its own degrees and validate degrees elsewhere. It will also be possible to apply for more tailored types of DAPS in the form of subject-specific DAPS and powers limited to bachelor degrees only. And focusing on university title, we will remove the overall student numbers cap criteria needed to gain university title, which is a barrier preventing smaller and specialist providers from being able to benefit from the prestige that comes from being a university. Under our plans, providers that have successfully operated with full DAPS for 3 years have more than 55% of its full-time equivalent students studying higher education and have passed a review will be eligible for university title. But let me say something very important, ladies and gentlemen. We're absolutely clear that no provider should be able to enter our system without meeting the very high academic standards that we expect of the sector. And this means that those applying for DAPS will be required to meet all registration conditions, including in relation to quality, financial viability and sustainability, and management and governance, in addition to successfully meeting the specific DAPS criteria. Providers applying for new DAPS will also be assessed against their readiness to operate DAPS, including their ability to set and maintain agreed academic standards for their higher education qualifications. Our reforms streamline the processes but do not lower standards in terms of the tests to be satisfied. It is a high bar which only high-quality providers will be able to meet. And let me assure you that where the student interest is at risk, the OFS will act swiftly and decisively. It will not turn away from hard-edged regulation where it is needed. Its approach will incorporate a full spectrum of responses. And I should say that these issues were much debated in the Lords, and much reassurance had to be given by me, as well as Joe, on this particular aspect of quality. And I'm sure this will resonate with you. Moving on to validation, designed to maximise choice and flexibility providers and students. Under our plans, providers will be able to choose between offering validated provision or going straight for the new DAPS, as I mentioned just now. Currently, providers have to wait until they have developed a track record for several years before they can access DAPS, no matter how good their offer or how much academic expertise that they have. To develop that, they typically have to rely on other providers to validate their provision. Validation agreements can be mutually beneficial for new providers and incumbents alike. However, I know and you will know that that is not always the case. For example, Le Cordon Bleu chose not to offer a UK degree via the validation process, as it felt it would be required to hand over its recipes, techniques, and individual culinary style to another provider in order to have its courses validated. Some smaller providers may find it difficult to find a validating partner because they are not considered a commercially attractive proposition, or that their offer is specialised and they cannot find a degree awarding body with the necessary expertise to perform a validating role. Validation agreements can be one-sided, where new providers may feel forced to adopt practices of incumbents in a way that stifles competition, curbs innovation, and results in the entrenchment of the same model of higher education. The OFS will be able to take concrete steps to improve validation services and address some of the barriers providers can face when seeking a validating partner. It will aim to address the lack of transparency and opportunity for providers to compare various offers. And this could include actively encouraging incumbents to develop validation services and setting out exemplar validation arrangements to help inform negotiations. Where these barriers remain, the OFS will be able to enter into commissioning arrangements with existing higher education providers, or indeed become a validator itself. So, IHE and its members are doing a fantastic job in providing the much-needed diversity and innovation within the sector. Competition expands the market and widens choice to the benefit of students. The reforms resulting from the Act will encourage new high-quality providers to enter the market and compete with established providers, while maintaining the world-class reputation of our higher education system. And we believe this will drive up innovation, diversity and quality, ensuring that we remain attractive internationally and make sure students have more information, better choice and more flexible ways of learning than ever before. And I would also like to take the opportunity to thank you here at IHE for your engagement with ministers and the department throughout the passage of the bill and now the Act, and now as we move forward to implement it. So I do encourage you all to respond positively to the introduction of the regulatory framework and all the related consultations. And with that, I think I'll leave it there and open up to questions. Thank you very much.
Who'd like to ask the first question?
First is always the most difficult. Yes, at the back.
One at the back there.
Hi, good morning. Paul Kirkham, ICMP. Just looking through, I support pretty much everything you say, but just looking through the consultation on degree awarding powers, I'm sure there are many in this room who are thinking, we're long-term established providers with a long track record, we've been signed up to the QAA, gone through higher education review, engaged with NSS, etc. There's no real advantage to us. The proposed routes to DAPS and university title require us to build the necessary infrastructure while continuing to pay our existing validating partner, go through the process under ACDAP, which is going to be at least 2 years, before we get an award of time limited. And then it'll be a further 3 years before we can apply for university title. Now, if you're a completely new provider, and welcome everybody to the sector, but if you're a completely new provider with zero track record, you can pretty much do the same thing, but you have lower cost because you don't have to carry on paying your existing validating partner. So there is no recognition in this proposal for those of us, many of whom will be in this room today, who've put in years gathering the experience and demonstrating the capability to have our own awarding powers and university title. Thank you.
Well, I don't know whether other people agree with that, but I think all I would really say is that the opening up to allowing new providers to move more quickly is very important. Now, there are these important issues that you've mentioned at the back, but I do hope that the reforms that we brought in will allow those brand new providers in, provided they meet the quality standards, to make it through more quickly and provide an offering with university title sooner than they otherwise would. In terms of the costs, that's important detail, I realise, but I think that's something which obviously we will have to look at as the process goes forward. I think this is the detail that we'll need to look at, definitely. We don't want to create barriers to providers offering quality degrees, and I think that's really all I can say on that, but I've noted what you've said, and there may be others who agree with you at the back. Yes, indeed.
Sorry, can you wait for a microphone, please? So we can get it on the video with your audible.
Yes, I totally disagree with the gentleman. I am also principal of a private college running 15 years. And in a democratic society, what her did it, her make equal for everybody a playing ground. Quality will survive, sustainability will survive, financial system, they will going to measure the standard, value for money, and whether any financial risk. That's why this is an excellent bill.
So I think that was more of a compliment than a question.
Yes, exactly. Not sure I can answer that, but I appreciate the support. But can I just say, it doesn't stop me listening to the gentleman at the back, and I will I should have said that I will pass your points back to the department. I think I'm going there straight after this, so I shall do that.
Just to add, we have had quite constructive conversations with DFE around this point, I think they've definitely heard a strength of feeling around making sure that the path for existing independent providers is no more onerous or lengthy than it is for new providers. So,
Yeah.
Any other questions? John in the middle there.
Yes, two questions. What will, well, perhaps it's a loaded question, but what will the role be, do you think, of the Quality Assurance Agency in terms of the ensuring quality assurance? For those of us who've been in higher education for quite some time, I've spent a lot of time in the English publicly funded sector, we've come to value the role of the QAA in maintaining quality standards in higher education. So in terms of new entrants with that track record, how do you envisage the role of the QAA? And secondly, I'm intrigued by the idea that the Office for Students will become a validator itself. And I'm just wondering if you could tease out what you might mean by that.
Well, on the first point, on the future of the QAA, I mean, the QAA fulfills an excellent role at the moment, and it will be up to the OFS to decide which best quality body will be brought in. I don't know whether it will be the QAA or equivalent, but and I couldn't possibly say. But I think that all I can say is that the QAA do a fantastic job, and they are going to be ever more important. And it ties in with the previous comments I've made about ensuring that quality is absolutely key. The other question was.
Well, the idea that the Office for Students would become a validator of last resort, or a validator itself.
Yeah.
What could that be?
Yeah, well, I remember, I'm scratching my memory on this, but we had quite a debate about that in the Lords, and I know that the Labour opposition were quite concerned that by them becoming a validator, there would be a conflict of interest. I felt that we had nailed that one a bit, but I think that it still lingered. We managed to get it through okay. There may have been a vote in it, and I need to stretch my memory on that. But we didn't think it was a concern, actually. We thought that there would not be a conflict of interest, actually. I think we made that clear, but the opposition thought that there would be. But we ended up by, I think, winning the argument. I'm not sure how much of a victory it was. Yeah.
One last question, perhaps, for Viscount Younger. No? Well, I think we are satisfied, and
Okay.
we shall thank you very much.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Thank you.